first with Chris Canty. You know, Canty, only one of us out here had the Texans winning the Super Bowl last year. I'm not naming names, and that was because of their dynamic quarterback, Deshaun Watson. No, it's because they were on Hard Knocks last year, and I think every team that's on Hard Knocks.
You fall in love with them.
Yep, that's it. Sucker! Watson was outstanding before his ACL injury, ending his season last year, as was Carson Wentz, who was leading the Eagles to the league's best record before tearing ligaments in his knee. Both are looking to have bounce-back years in 2018. But, Chris, how hard is it to bounce back to form for these guys?
Well, it's going to be really hard. I think Deshaun Watson will have an easier road just because he has experience with that same injury. He had it in college. So you know what it is that second time around to go through the rehab and what it's going to take and the timeline to where you're going to start feeling like yourself. But you have to understand you're working with a new body. And so I think for Carson Wentz, that will be the biggest adjustment for him. And you can point to the clips that they showed of him working out in the pregame routine where he slipped and he stumbled a little bit with his footwork that he was working on, simulating being in the pocket and going through his progression. So I think there is a little bit of a learning curve when understanding how to deal with the rehab of this injury. And more so, it's the mental state that you're in. Just making sure that you understand that it's not going to be an overnight result in terms of being able to be back to where you were when he injured that knee in Los Angeles back in December. So I think that both guys are in a good situation. Deshaun Watson has a good complement of skill position players that will be able to support him. When he returns, he'll be able to get the ball in those guys' hands, let them do the heavy lifting on the offensive end. And then Carson Wentz, of course, has Nick Foles, a Super Bowl MVP, as his backup. So there's no need to rush right there. If anything, the coaching staff is going to have to slow down Carson Wentz because he's going to be in a hurry to prove that he is one of those quarterbacks that merits MVP consideration, especially when your backup has that level of success.
Yeah, I think great observation. I think you saw some of the same things that I saw from last night because I thought the video of Carson Wentz before the game that Troy Aikman and Joe Buckingham talked about was very impressive. I've seen a lot of quarterbacks work out, but I think that when we think about quarterback injuries, we don't think about Carson Wentz, how strong he is. Like, look how powerful his legs are. He's a mobile quarterback. He is a great athlete, not a good athlete. He's got a big-time arm, and his lead leg, not his back leg in his throwing motion, was the one that was injured. If it was his back leg, the one he was pushing off of, no, because your front leg in throwing the football just helps you more guide the ball. Your back leg helps you push off and go with it.
So you'd be more concerned about his ability to recover from this if it's his right leg?
Yes, it would be a little slower. Now, we're still 9 months from inside of 9 months from when he did injure, which you said, Canty, in December. But he's a powerful athlete, and you can see that he's so far advanced in his workouts. The only thing that he hadn't had is just live bodies around his legs. But you can see with the cone drills that they were doing, with him anticipating being able to move in and out of the pocket, he is a great athlete. He's just not some nimble guy. He is not Teddy Bridgewater when he got hurt. He is not Sam Bradford when he got hurt.
He's not even RG3, who was a great athlete but didn't have the strength throughout his body that Carson Wentz has.
That's what I've seen with Carson Wentz. And watching video coming out of the Texans practice, I think Deshaun Watson, his throwing motion, has really gotten even quicker as far as releasing the football. People talk about his deep ball, lack of being accurate. He's proved that last year he can do that. Now, can he do that over a season? I believe both of their stats, which their touchdown to interception ratio, Nick and I have talked about this, it might not be as great as it was last year, but they could still have the MVP type of seasons because that's just the way it goes. When Aaron Rodgers was MVP, when he came back the next year, he threw more interceptions, but he was still on a level that you would consider him. You see that in Brady year in and year out.
Well, so that I think right there is the key. Bill Barnwell wrote a great article on this. He's one of, I think, the smartest football writers out there, talking about let's pretend these guys didn't get hurt and say, where do we think they will regress from last year? Right? So let's remove the knee injury entirely. What was the thing about Wentz I couldn't stop talking about last year? How amazing he was on third down. It was one of the best third down quarterbacking seasons we've seen in a decade. It was actually, according to Barnwell, one of the 10 best seasons. The other guys on the list, Brady's got a couple years, Manning, Rodgers, Breeze, every single one of those guys. The next year was much closer to league average on third down. In that regard, the water finds its level. So when he has a 123 rating on third downs, like, hurt or not, you can't duplicate that year after year. That's Carson Wentz. Now on Deshaun Watson. Watson had a remarkable season in this regard. He had the 3rd highest interception rate in the NFL. Only Kaiser and Simeon were higher. And he still had these unbelievable numbers. Unbelievable because of the volume of touchdowns, because receivers only dropped 1% of passes that he was throwing when the league average is about 4.
Right.
Those are areas where if he never hurt his knee, you are likely, it's hard to have that type of great season with that many interceptions. The last quarterback to do it, according to Barnwell, was Y.A. Tittle. That was in 1963. So there's reason to believe for both of these guys, statistically, they won't be the same, even if their bodies are as healthy as ever. And we know their bodies obviously aren't as healthy as ever.
I know Deshaun Watson was so fantastic coming out of college, but was last year too small of a sample size for you, CC, to know that he's going to be able to be this good or to be able to project? We saw so much more from Carson Wentz last season.
No, I believe Deshaun Watson's going to be a great football player. It's just a matter of when he hits, and I try to talk to Nick about the difference between the good players and the great ones. The great ones get to their peak earlier. They get to their prime earlier, and they hang in there longer. It's just a matter of when he gets there. And then once he gets there, how long can he stay there? Because I believe he is going to be one of the faces of the National Football League for the next 10 years. He is what we've wanted to see between Cam Newton and Michael Vick. That's who Deshaun Watson is. He is that new cat. And I believe he's going to dominate in the league for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with you, CC. I think he wants to be great, and he's willing to put in the work. And you see his understanding of the NFL game. You don't usually see quarterbacks have that quick an ascent in terms of being able to grasp what the NFL game is all about and get acclimated to it. But, Nick, you said something about the statistical seasons of Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson, and maybe they might regress back to league average. The one thing I will say, and I'm agreeing with you in that capacity, the one thing I will say is by both of those quarterbacks being on the field, you're going to see a difference in terms of how they impact their team winning. When Deshaun Watson was out there on the field last year, the Houston Texans averaged over 30 points a game. When he wasn't the starting quarterback, it was less than 20. Yeah. So you see that, and of course, with the Philadelphia Eagles and Carson Wentz, they were the best team in football. Now, I understand that Nick Foles went 5-1 as the starter once he got hurt, and they won the Super Bowl, but it's a different team. It's a different team. Listen, that Atlanta Falcons game in the divisional round in Philadelphia is not as close if Carson Wentz is the starting quarterback. So I look at that and I say maybe he might not have the same statistical season, but Carson Wentz, when he's there, their team is going to have, it's going to be the same impact on winning.
He made them coaches a lot better, too.
He sure did. Got them coaches a lot richer, too.
Chris, we'll see you later on in the show. Coming up on the other side, Ice Cube.